We see an expert to check up on our health. We see an expert to check up on our car. Why don't we do the same with our finances? Jump online and book a free personal financial health check with Jeff Bowman from Wealth by Design. Knowledge is power. Follow the link on edgeradioaustralia.com. Design a future for you and your children. Wealth by Design.
Oh, that guy, he sounds like he's got his finger on the pulse. He knows what's going on. Let's get on to this Jeff guy from Wealth by Design. Hey, it could be the show right now, Wealth by Design, and the gentleman beside me. Great to see you there, Jeff. And as usual, mate, looking $1 million. I mean, the shirt is probably going to send the camera nuts.
Fresh from Bari, mate. Fresh from Bari.
Nice, very nice indeed.
Only about 4 hours south of Italy.
Oh, jeez, just rub it in.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's where I do all my shopping.
Of course it is. Yeah, Milan, New York, that's the way you go. Fantastic to see you, mate. Always an unbelievable pleasure.
Lovely to be here, Aaron. And that little promo you've got going there on the Wealth by Design.
You like that?
Comes up well.
Oh, I think so, yeah. We're all
I didn't even need to approve it. It just looked like a beauty.
Well, bit of a winner there.
Yes.
We've got a guest, mate.
We
now,
have indeed.
Like to do the
because as you know, we always like to have top guests.
We do.
Consistent with the normal message with Wealth by Design, it's all about money and the key players involved.
Yeah.
And we talk about the major asset classes, and one of the biggest ones is property. We know that global investable market is about 550 trillion, of which a big portion is property. And we've got Albert here today. Albert Murphy, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Great to have Albert.
Mate.
Yeah. So I've known Albert for quite a while. He's been to our Money Matters events. He's a big supporter, a networker of, and involved with all the players in the money game. But his speciality is property, and so it's such an important area because it's never managed always brilliantly by the promoters.
Right.
We know that. I'm old enough now to know about those Queensland White Shoe Brigade sharks that would be knocking on doors here in Perth 40 years ago going, do you want to buy this block of land? And guess what? It floods at high tide.
Oh, small details.
Not a really good.
Just the smaller details.
Do you like surfing? It's coming home.
Not a really good deal.
No.
So those, so I think door knocking's illegal these days. But yeah, so it's great to have quality operators in the property game. So mate, thank you so much for coming, Albert.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
You've given us a bit of a heads up here on a few of the things you're doing, but you own a business called the Property Strategist. You're a property strategist, and your business is called Property Empire. And so, mate, probably just give us a bit of an idea of how you got started in the game, a bit of your background.
Yes, I got involved in the game was all a bit by chance. I was my dad was a building contractor, and when I grew up in Ireland, when I left Ireland, I intentionally came over to Australia in 2001, potentially just for a year, and then we were going to go back, and I was going to take over my dad's building company. And after 6 months of being in Australia, I decided, no, this is where I want to be. I love Sydney, and I was doing. I had a business. We were doing roof restoration for a while.
Okay.
And in 2008, I fell off a roof. I was about 4.5 meters up and fell off the roof and busted my back, and I was off for 9 months. And my wife said to me, "You're not going back up on the roof again."
Change of lifestyle. 101.
Yeah, so it was
a
direction that I hadn't intended to take because I loved what I was doing. But I had started investing probably back in 2007. We bought our first house, and then in early 2009 we bought another one. And then when I couldn't go back up on the roofs again, that's why we decided we'd go into property investing. And back then there was a company I got in touch with, and they were showing people how to purchase property using your super and self-managed super funds and the advantages to that. And I got into it and I loved it. And I've been doing it ever since now. So that was January 2009. I started off doing property, and here we still are today, 15, 16 years later, still doing it today.
You've hit something that I absolutely love. You said you love it. I mean, that's the thing. And if you're passionate about what you do it better, right?
Yes.
You really do.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than that. That job that we go to and we just I don't know, just the daily grind. We can't stand it. So if you're passionate, you love it. It's a great start.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And you mentioned super too, because we're all about financial literacy, obviously, with what we do with the Wealth by Design model, just educating the basics, because there's about 10 million Australians don't even access financial planning advice. So if they're coming to you, they're getting great advice on property. And you know a bit about super, obviously, because you just mentioned self-managed super funds. But we would have people that would contact us and go, gee, Jeff, we made a big decision a few years ago. to plan for our retirement through property acquisition instead of super. Can you believe that?
Yes.
And you'd go, well, hang on a minute,
Sadly,
you can
I
actually do both. And tell us a bit about how that works for your clients in super and why they do it.
A lot of the time, well, especially now that clients have been hearing that the super is possibly getting to be tapped into, and the government are obviously struggling financially, and they need to. There's talks now that they're going to be accessing people's super, even though that they don't expect that they're going to do it. And most people realize that the super that they have is never going to be enough to help them in retirement. I mean, the average super fund balance, I was just doing a presentation for an accountancy firm last week, and it was around 440,000. Okay. Is what the average person has when they retire. And if you're going to be in retirement for 20 years, that's only about 20 grand a year you're going to have. And most people are going to need significantly more than that.
So that's most people's grocery bill, right?
Yeah. So if you think about it that way, no one plans to retire in the poverty line.
Sure.
But unfortunately, those that don't plan and they haven't got a plan in place, unfortunately, they fail. And I think now there's so much media attention, the Facebook, and you've got all the platforms, and people are becoming a lot more educated on what can happen, and where they were always kind of the ostrich in the head in the sand. The government is going to look after me. We're going to be sweet. But the reality is that they're not. And unless they start to do something now, and super is just one of those options where people have money sitting there. They don't believe their super is doing very well. And now that the government have made the rules that you can go along and take your super out as long as you've got a certain balance in there, generally they need around 250 grand. And if they can certainly look at putting it in there as long as they get special advice from a licensed financial planner. Of course. We can certainly assist them in the types of properties we source for them that meet all the requirements for ASIC and the ATO. So again, it's just making sure that the clients have the right advice beforehand, but we can certainly source the properties for them anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter whether they want Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales. We can pretty much find that. Fantastic. Anywhere.
And is it easy to get a loan inside a self-managed super fund if you're going to borrow money for the property?
It is. It's a little bit more tricky than going along and just getting your normal loan, simply because the banks need to see they want that serviceability, but they also need to make sure that the client has got enough working years ahead of them before they can get in there. And there's only a small number of lenders now lending through self-managed super funds, whereas back 10 years ago, there was a lot more. There's less in there now than what there was. Right. That'll probably start to change as time goes on. But I think it's because there was a lot of sharks out there putting people into properties when they only had 100, 120, 150,000 in super. And that's nowhere near enough. Speaking to the lenders, the financial advisors, they're going, no, it needs to be a lot more than that. So it is possible to get the finances. There's many people getting it, but we need to make sure that the client has that right
capacity. Because they're going into retirement, they don't need heaps of debt in their super, right?
No.
It's going to be paid off at some stage.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, it's buying the right property, because unfortunately people are purchasing properties that shouldn't be put in there because it's so negatively geared that the super fund is trying to carry and cover all of the shortfall that's between the income and their expenses.
Yes.
And if they happen to have to sell that too early, then unfortunately there's going to be big debt in the super fund. And that's what ASIC and the ATO are trying to avoid, and not so the clients aren't getting into the wrong investment. And
I'm just going to reach in there, mate, and just pull your mic down a little bit there. You're hiding from us. There you go.
You stand away from us.
He's a good-looking fella. Come on, share it with the world.
We've got to see your face as well.
That's right, mate. There's so much of this.
It was screaming up.
I mean, there's so much to this, but the right advice is the ticket here, right? Like, okay, if you go into any market, whether it be real estate, this, that, whatever, if you don't have the knowledge, go and talk to someone with it, because you're right. Like, if you've got something that's heavily negative geared, which, so many people are very much in love with negative gearing, and there's obviously positives to it, but when we're talking about your super, this could be an issue if you can't turn it over, if you can't actually use that money.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's a critical factor for sure.
Tell me, Albert, about yields. There's no franking credits on rent, right? Which makes that shares attractive if they're decent income producing shares with franking credits. So no franking credits on rent. Tell us about the sort of investment return that your clients, or you try to get your clients into, because if it's a lousy 2 or 3% net return, it's not a very good return, right?
No.
So how do you go about trying to find properties with high yields, and what sort of yields can your investors sort of expect a property to achieve that you would recommend?
Yeah, so a good question. It really depends because there's so many different types of properties out there now. It can range from your real popular ones at the moment are co-living and rooming houses.
Yep.
Those are 5 years ago, they weren't as popular, they weren't as known out there, but in the last couple of years, that's becoming a lot more mainstream. What that is that's where you might have 5 rooms in a property.
Yep.
And every room is getting rented out individually.
Yeah, so 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms.
Yeah, 5 bathrooms, and then each one will have their own little mini cooking facilities in the room, or a little desk and a maybe a microwave or something.
Okay.
And then they'll share the communal kitchen.
Okay, got it.
And they can get upwards of $300, $350 per room. Versus if you buy a normal house in the same suburb, you might only get $600 to rent out the whole house to a one family.
Right,
that's a big difference.
So that's a big difference.
Okay, so $1,600 a week.
Yeah, so we're seeing yields of anywhere between kind of 6 to 11%. In the
fantastic.
Yeah, so the yields are excellent.
Yeah.
Now the only issue is with some of them, because with a lot of one of the rules with the self-managed super funds, you can't generally buy a block of land and then have a builder and you have what they call a 2-part contract. And that's sometimes where the yields are there, but it may not suit someone in their self-managed super fund now unless we go along and get that converted over into a single contract.
Yes.
And there are people, unfortunately, we're hearing it all the time that people are out there and they're purchasing house and land packages through a self-managed super fund, and they shouldn't, because once it's audited, it's basically incorrect now, and then they end up getting a slap on the wrist, and there's fines and there's everything else. So,
right, Albert, I'm so glad you said this, because actually we've got a question that's come up there from Lisa. Thank you for the question, Lisa. Albert, would you recommend investing in new or established property? So this is it's very much linked to what you're talking about here.
Yes, again, really good question, Lisa. There's many sides to that. The new is really good because it's generally easier to rent.
Okay.
You've got less maintenance issues with it. The rents are generally higher. You've got very low maintenance cost. Again, because the property is brand new, there's someone going to look after it. The developer is building it, the builder is giving you warranties on it. And it's also very good for depreciation. You get far more tax benefits from a new property versus an older existing one. So they're the main positives. Then there's obviously the downsides to it. It doesn't suit every category. As I said, if you're looking for a house on land scenario, you can't do that inside a super fund, but you can buy an established property in a super fund.
Okay.
The other good thing with old property is if someone wants to rent it out quickly, they can just get it rented quickly, but the tax benefits are going to be nowhere near the same.
Right.
And what we do find over the years is clients that buy an older property, especially if it's kind of over 10 years plus, they'll find out that the air conditioner needs to get replaced, or there's some big cost that they didn't know of, or a lot of the issues here in Perth we have over the years is there was builders using old Plex piping, the plastic piping, and they're starting to bust after that 8-10 years.
Gotcha.
And there's lots of issues there. So there's pros and cons in every investment, but generally most of our investors are chasing the new, especially if they're in kind of the second, third high tax bracket.
Okay.
It's far more beneficial for them to go along and buy something that's brand new.
Oh, look, it's a great point. I mean, I once woke up in my house that I was living in previously, and I had 2 swimming pools because of exactly that. A pipe had burst in the kitchen, and I had the swimming pool out the back, the one I knew about. But my games room was also a swimming pool. So,
cool. Wow.
And the massive expenses, obviously, and insurance and all of that. But, that all had to be repaired. And now, if it's a new house, that's under warranty and that's covered by the builder,
Correct.
I would assume. Yeah.
And as I said, we find when we speak to, because over the years we'll go back and we'll speak to both the investors and then the property managers that are managing them and ask them what do you dislike about the new houses as well. They're obviously going to be set up a lot different. They've got an open plan living. They've got more modern facades to them. So people will have been, when you go to unsell the property again, and every investor that buys a property today is not buying it without intending selling it at some stage. So you want to make sure you're buying an investment that's going to be saleable down the track. So that's why we're finding, it's and the property managers love dealing with something that's new because it's a lot easier for them to, they're not dealing with headaches constantly and chasing up landlords and asking them to fix X, Y, and Z in the house. There's a lot of advantages for sure in buying a brand new property, but everyone is different. It's not a one glove fits all scenario. And that's where we really sit with our clients to understand why one would be better versus another.
Well, this is exactly right. I mean, this show is not financial advice. We're talking about all these different aspects. When this is to be an impetus for people to go and get the advice from the experts.
From the experts.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Now, another one for you. I was always told that land appreciates, dwellings depreciate, right? And so is it true to say that we know that's a fact, that land appreciates as a general rule, and dwellings depreciate. So is it fair to say that you should be looking more often at a standalone house than an apartment if you're expecting more capital growth from your investment? Is there any truth in that when it comes down to your area of expertise and when you advise people?
Yeah, and again, it'll come down to a few things. It'll come down to, number one, the I suppose the borrowing capacity of an individual. That because when you're going looking at property, everyone thinks that yes, apartments don't grow in value, and that's incorrect. There's plenty of them that do it. It's location specific.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
So apartments have got a bad rap over the years, mainly because people were buying them in. Everyone has known someone or has heard of someone, or they've owned one themselves that they built up in Melbourne in the Docklands. That was probably the most famous one, where the place was just absolutely littered with apartments, and they were sold way too inflated, and they're still not worth the same value than what they paid for them 7-8 years ago.
Right. Okay, well,
but then if you bought apartments at the moment right now in Perth,
yep,
for the last 18 months to 2 years, have appreciated more than some houses have, even in the southern and the eastern suburbs here.
So location specific is critical.
That's
and that's your area of expertise, right?
Yeah. So apartments, like I've sold lots of apartments in Sydney, in Parramatta, Liverpool, all those areas, and they have done exceptionally well in growth.
Yeah. So
some places in the Sunshine Coast have far outperformed Brisbane.
Yeah.
And people would think that Brisbane would have been far better than the Sunshine Coast. Now in the likes of in the Gold Coast, there's some apartments that you could have bought there for 600,000 for maybe even three years ago are now over $1 million.
There you go. I've noticed that in Perth. Yeah. A couple of places. I literally was looking at places. I thought I want something close to work. Looking at that convenience, and I've seen those almost double. Yeah.
Well, see, the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have as many people coming into Australia as what we have now.
That's right.
And particularly in the last 4 years, we've got a huge number of people coming in that are, and they've lived
immigration rates through the roof.
Yeah, and they've lived in countries where they've lived in apartments, and they've been living in condensed accommodation.
Sure.
Yep.
Or basically where they've lived in that type of accommodation, and that's what they want again.
And they're expecting to move to a similar.
What they want.
Yeah.
But the average Australian they just think that if it hasn't got a big backyard and it hasn't got room for kids and a pool and everything, that property doesn't go the same way, and it's incorrect.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, that's very good feedback. Appreciate that.
It's all location specific. There's some areas that apartments and townhouses will far perform out a house. If you bought in the same suburb, that an apartment will do better than what a house would in that same location. So again, everything is going to be specific to certain areas, and it's also going to be specific to, does it suit the client's requirements, and what are they really trying to achieve in that investment.
Fantastic.
Well, it's a case of talking to the client, actually finding out what their needs are. Yeah, that's the big thing, I would tend to think.
Yeah.
As far as from a living point of view or an investment point of view, and most of the time we talk about investments here, right?
Yeah, so I'd say about 90% of what we do is investing. We did a lot of the owner-occupier a few years back, but most of our clients are coming to us now from accountants and financial planners, and they've got their investors that are looking to invest. So and then, as I said, we can source such properties anywhere in the country, generally Queensland, New South Wales, WA, Victoria.
So how do you go about actually sourcing those properties? So do you know the builders and the developers, or how do you actually physically find those properties for your clients?
Yeah, good question. The good thing of being involved in it for 15, 16 years is you build up a lot of relationships.
Yes.
Cool.
And the relationships are key in anything you do in life. And so right now, it wouldn't matter if it was Stockland, Lindlease, all the major land developers we've got contacts with throughout all the states, whether it's Queensland, Victoria, wherever. And in the same way, we've got about 35, 38 builders that we work very closely with, and we've been working with them for a very long time.
Right.
And that was really important, especially when there was so many builders going bankrupt. And thankfully, in all the years that we've worked, we've never had a builder that has gone bankrupt or anything like that when they were disappearing over that. And that was mainly down to the research that we do on the properties for our clients. We also do the same research on the builders. Making sure, yeah, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that it's our name on the brand. If we're referring a particular client to a blog builder, we want to ensure that that builder is obviously going to finish the house on time, do what they say they're going to do, whatever price that they say it's going to be, that price should stay all the way through. Sure. And the client gets what they say they were, or what they were hoping to get when the house is completed, or the apartment, whatever that is. Right. So yeah, we'll do the research on the builders and all of that the same way. We want to know that they've been around a long time, their quality of work, their time frames, what's their backing, all of that type of stuff. So we'll have those. We don't deal with builders that we've never dealt with before or that we don't know of. So we wouldn't put, the way we look at it, we wouldn't put a client into something that we wouldn't buy ourselves.
Yeah, brilliant.
Can I circle back on something, because I want to look from the super point of view, okay? As investment. These cohabitated house. Sorry, what was the term? So
there's co-living and there's
the co-living. Yeah, the co-living with each has their individual
5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, right? Little kitchenette.
Yeah, look, I can see this being quite prevalent in the future. I can see this really having some legs. Are you finding that? And I don't want you to give specific advice, of course, but I mean, is the natural trend that's tending to be the stronger investment from a super point of view?
In all aspects, it is. There's a lot more clients chasing it now, mainly because most clients want a higher returning or a high yielding or a high cash flow investment, and your traditional house or unit doesn't do that. And as things go on, because rents are so expensive now, and young individuals that are starting off, what we're finding is that the clients that are the rents that are tenants that will go along and get into a co-living house, the reason they're going into that is because the rent is so low and they're trying to get their own deposits together to purchase their own homes. So there's going to be, and as prices keep going up, the younger generation are not going to be able to get into their houses as easy as what they think they are, because the property prices have gone up so rapidly in the last 5 years, but our incomes haven't.
That's right.
So that's where, yes, it is going to be changing, and especially in certain locations, and as long as you're close to hospitals and major transportation hubs, that's where the co-living is becoming very, very popular.
Okay. Am I right in this? This is my little assessment. Also, if you've got, say, 5 people living there, you're also lowering your risk, because the chance of that place being vacant is
very low.
Considerable.
Yeah, it's very low. And there are some property managers that specialize in it, and they will guarantee to our clients that if we drop below 75% of the rent, that they will still guarantee the rent in that property anyway. So it doesn't matter. You're still going to get 75% of whatever your rent should have been. So again, they're only picking these areas because they know that there's always going to be a tenant there. The chances of that property being vacant, you might have one tenant leave, but there's still 3 more there. And it's only going to be a few weeks before they get another one in. So it definitely alleviates a lot of the risk. But it is a changing scenario where most people are starting to realize, that they don't have the cash flow, or they don't want to be spending $700 on a property when they can rent it for $300. And all they want to do is focus on, they only want the room. They don't need a whole house. They don't want to be maintaining it. And that's the advantage of the co-living and the multi. There's all different names for it: multi-generational, co-living, rooming houses. It all means the same thing at the end of the day. It's just different terminology.
Great.
And I think with the whole dysfunctionality with the younger generation not being able to buy their own homes in many cases, which is the reason why this co-living thing is coming into it, because it's a stepping stone to getting to a point where they can get a deposit together to buy a house. And with the immigration rates the way they are, I'd be surprised if that whole thing doesn't, alter for a long time. Like the co-living 5-bedroom, 5 bath, it'll just be there for bloody long, it's ages. So the investors will get a certainty that that's a highly rentable type of property.
I think there's always going to be a space for it. Well, okay, you look at just the market you were talking about, people who are going, okay, I want to, I aspire to own my own home, or they might have a business, they might, whatever. Okay, so let's keep my costs low, so they can save, or they might be obsessed with holidays. Who knows? But the lifestyle balance, I think that for a lot of people that will create a lifestyle balance, and I think that will open that door and keep that the opportunity to keep those places full for a very long time.
Well, we would definitely have clients, I reckon, that come out of our Money Matters events that would love to talk to you, because a lot of our guys, reason I set up Wealth by Design was money for the oldies. Like when the oldies are really like early 50s to mid 60s, right?
You're talking about us, mate, but okay, fine.
yeah.
We're the oldies. Man, of course, it's quite surprised that we're getting 30-year-olds in now, which is actually a whole new subject. But if they've got one of these properties that is going to generate between 110 and 140 grand a year in rent, based on the numbers you've just given us, $1,600, a week, then if they're getting a 10% yield net, so it might be 9, but after expenses, it could be 8 to 10% net. Would that be a fair assessment?
It can be. It depends again on, like if I look at the last location that we were putting some clients in, and that was in Ballarat, and it was a project that the health service up there had come to us and said, listen, we've got a number of clients that we want to put into properties. Can you find the investors that we would put into those properties, and they buy it? And then they were guaranteeing to give, it was the yield on that was a 10% gross yield. So the net yield on them, they were probably coming down to around that 6.5%.
Net 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
But it's still.
It's 6 is good if it's net, because if they've got $1 million property and it's in super and over 60, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're picking up 60 grand a year,
That's
$5
right.
grand a month, no tax.
Yeah.
Right. No
That's
tax.
the difference.
No tax. And so they've got 2 of those. They've got, they're happy days. They've got 10 or 12 grand a month coming in, net of tax.
Yeah.
The property is in there and giving its normal, 3 to 7% capital growth, which is not a big issue for these guys because they're retired. They want income. They don't want growth, really, because their kids will inherit the house out of the super fund as beneficiaries, right? So, so they're chasing cash flow. So that is a very, very attractive thing for these people wanting to supplement their retirement. But as long as it's in a self-managed super fund, because it's tax-free after age 60, and you're retired and you're in pension phase, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
and it's like everything. There's the good ones are there, but we'd love for them to be there forever and a day. But it's like anything. It's just as long as the properties are there, and they always come back. It's just a matter of finding them, and as long as we know what the client's capacity is, we can certainly find the option for them.
Another question, another type of tenant being the disabled market, NDIS. Do you touch that at all? Do you get involved in that?
Yeah, we've done a lot of that. We haven't done as much in the last probably 8 to 12 months, mainly because the government had made some changes in the NDIS space. So there's a lot of investors that have built these, and they've been oversupplied. So they've been built in because no one had the data. So the data was out there, but unfortunately, what was happening is that developers were leasing land, and we would go. Or an SDA provider that's going to be finding the tenants, for example, they will go, this is a good area, there's demand. But unfortunately, nobody knew exactly how many properties were going to get built in these areas because that data doesn't get released until the properties are completed. So the land developers weren't always playing ball and telling everyone, well, there's already 10 more gone in here before you come in.
Yes.
So that data would never be there. The research
they're going in
would be
blind, aren't they? Yeah.
Research. People need to do the research.
They need to do the research. But the problem is a lot of that research, no matter how much research they did, they would never know behind the scenes.
Yes. Because it's retrospective, right?
Of course it is. Yeah.
So if the land developers were leasing 30 blocks of land and 25 of them were going to be NDIS, and you've seen on the data that NDIS are saying there's 15 tenants right now in this area that are looking for property. But no one knew that there was 25 or 30 going to be released by 2 developers across the road.
Sure.
That's where the issue came in. That there can be and will be oversupply in certain areas. There's massive oversupply. There's huge oversupply in around Logan and Ipswich and those areas at the moment. There's so people are getting caught out a bit. And the other issue is that the government would say that they were paying the rent for the investors, and now that has stopped. they're paying it, but sometimes it could take up to 3-4 months before that rent would get received.
Is that right?
Ooh.
So you're now carrying an investment that you don't have the income coming in as
with debt.
Yeah,
classic problem.
Yeah, because the government used to backdate it. Now they've stopped it.
Now they've stopped it. Right.
So getting the tenants in there, you could be we now tell clients it'll be 3 to 4 months from once that property is handed over until your first tenant is in there.
Yes.
Look, this comes from experience. I mean, let's face it. We don't have a crystal ball.
No,
we can't tell what's going to happen. This is a new sort of very interesting way of doing housing, rather. And you obviously want to supply homes for people who are in need. And I think there was always going to be a little bit of to and fro, there was going to be mistakes made, I guess. But going forward, now that we know that, you can actually plan better than we could before.
Correct. And I mean, at the end of the day, not everything that the government rolls forward is going to be as plain sailing as they had planned, because obviously things change on their half as well. And then you've got change of governments, and there's it's all aspects that change. But at the end of the day, it's down to, there are certain locations that are still going to be really good for investors, but the lending space has changed inside buying NDIS as well now. There's loads of investors that want to get into it, but now the finance is not as easy to get.
So tell us what's going on there. Is it tougher to get signed off because a financial planner or an accountant's got to sign off to say it's in the best interest of the client? Has that got a bit tougher?
No, it's even if the client was just buying a property in their own name, nothing to do with their self-managed super fund, they were just buying an NDIS property. The issue at the moment is a lot of the lenders have stepped out of that space now because they're getting over leveraged. They're just seeing that they're exposed too much debt in areas where people haven't been able to get the tenants, and now the banks are obviously getting a little bit I suppose scared that they're going to get into more debt into areas where they're not going to be able to get the tenants. So it is getting harder to get the finance unless there's a lot of back data to show that there is plenty of tenants there, or you can try and get a head lease agreement signed up initially. What that is whoever is managing the property is going to eventually manage that property once it's completed, that they've already got tenants lined up ready to come in, and they can guarantee that tenants are there. And they're a lot harder to get now because no one wants to be putting their head on the block that it's that they're going to have that head agreement, and it's not always the case. The finance is becoming a stumbling block for a lot of people in the especially if you're trying to build the property. If it's already completed, it's not as bad. But if you're trying to start from scratch, there's a much harder.
It's a harder boat to row. Interest rates. What are your investors currently paying?
It ranges somewhere in the low sixes.
Low sixes?
Is generally what they're getting on the interest only. We were hoping we were going to get an interest decrease
but didn't happen.
Tuesday, but that didn't happen. But most likely it'll happen maybe next month or the month after.
All right. And do you work with your own preferred sort of finance broking people?
Yeah, so some of our clients will come to us already from their brokers, and they'll
they're already set.
And they're already pre-approved and ready to go. And then there's others that don't. They'll just come to us, and then if we've got brokers that we can refer to them, we'll certainly do that.
Great.
So it'll come from a mix of. But we always advise our clients to go to a broker if at all possible, rather than just dealing directly with a bank, because they need to look at all different lenders.
Dead right.
There's so many different lenders out there now, and some are good for one product versus another.
Brokers are worth their weight in gold. I love brokers.
100%.
Yeah. They actually work for the client. They don't work for the product provider.
Yeah. And that is the big distinction.
And that's the distinction of a broker, which is marvelous. Yeah.
I've noticed that sort of space has changed quite over a long period of time. But people used to go, and it was almost like back in the day, you'd go and you talk to the bank manager, you're almost begging, for a loan kind of thing. Now it's flipped a lot. You're the person you're the customer. You're okay. So you've got options. If you go to these brokers, they do a fantastic job. Find what suits you and what suits the property. And so many
because there's
different aspects to it.
As I said, some investors, they only want to invest in their super. Not every broker understands self-managed super fund lending. It's the same way as if they're wanting to buy something that's getting constructed, or if it's an NDIS. There's not many brokers that understand the NDIS space. Again, you need to, or there's a lot of people that are self-employed, and some brokers are specialists in dealing with self-employed people, and they'll understand which lenders would be the best one to place your situation with. So and a good broker will have access to 20, 30, 40 different lenders and products, and you can imagine they're all different. So a good broker will know again, which client should be placed with which lender. And it's not all about the interest rate. It's about which lender is going to enable you to get the finance.
Of course.
Because it doesn't matter if you're getting 5% over here, but you can't get the finance. And this guy's charging you 6% over here, but you can get the finance. You'd rather go and pay the 6% and get the finance. Of
course you would.
And get the property that you're looking to get into.
Yeah, dead right.
So, it's not necessarily around the interest rate. It's more about the lender.
Very good. I noticed also in the research that we did on you, Albert, and some of the information you supplied us, a lot of our sort of support people out there that know what we're doing here, getting the word out about various people involved in the wealth accumulation space, would be pleased to know that you're actually a multi-million-dollar private investor yourself in this game. You're not just a promoter. So you talked about 2 houses, but you've got a lot more than 2 houses. And I think that's a great thing for our people to know.
Skin in the game.
That you've got skin in the game and you walk the talk.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's one thing that I think it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're going to go to a gym and you're going to go to a personal trainer, you want to go to someone that's already achieved what you were hoping to achieve. And I think at the end of the day, I was very fortunate that throughout the years, when I first started off in the property game, that one of the mentors I had back then taught me a very important lesson I still carry today. And he said, Albert, you've got 2 choices in life. You can either pay now and play later, or you can play now and pay later. Either way, you have only 2 choices.
Yeah.
So you've got to start investing. You got to get your money working for you, and you've got to understand. And it's a lot easier. Most people think it's very hard to get into a property because when you get your own one, the only one that's paying the debt is you.
Yeah.
And you're paying all of the expenses of both the mortgage and the rates and the insurances and everything else. But when you've got an investment property, 70, 80, 90% of it is being paid by the tenant and the taxman.
Yeah.
You're only paying the small difference.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases now, there are certain properties out there like the co-livings and so different properties that you're nearly getting all of the costs covered.
Sure.
So it's not hard to get into and start building a property portfolio. And everyone has what we call lazy equity sitting in your home right now. There's a lot of listeners out there that's probably wondering, can I get into an investment property? And the answer is yes, you can. If you've got equity, your property is worth $1 million, for example, and you've got a mortgage of $400,000, you've technically got $600,000 of, we call it lazy equity or wasted cash sitting in the 4 walls of your house right now.
Use it.
Yeah, use it. Yeah. Take it out, because at the end of the day, if you're not using it, the bank is using it. The bank is lending more money, going to their creditors and going, well, we've got a property over here, it's worth this, but we only have a loan on this. They're able to lend it out. So you've got to control your own destiny at the end of the day.
I like that.
And the money is sitting there. So you can get in tomorrow without having to put much of your own money in there. You're just using equity from one property and leveraging it into another.
Okay.
And as long as you can afford the upkeep of that property, if it's costing you $100 a week over and above all your expenses, your insurances, your rates, and everything else, and you can afford that, you go for it. That's we get too caught up, I think, in all of the what ifs, and no one has a crystal ball, and no one knows. We could walk out tomorrow and we get knocked down by a bus. But at the end of the day, it's you can't be sitting back and expecting that the government is going to look after us, which is what we kind of alluded to earlier. That you've got to basically take control of your own destiny.
That's right. Definitely. I often say, the government is not your friend, and it's very true. Like, you have to take control of your own destiny. You're absolutely right, and nobody wants to live in poverty on the years you work so hard all your life. You retire. You want to enjoy it. Yeah.
You do.
Or at least, very least, be comfortable. Don't be struggling.
But I think retirement is not a factor of age. It's a factor of, if you've got enough of the money, you can retire whenever you want.
Correct.
But there's a lot of people, the vast majority of people are doing something that they don't want to be doing. Like we touched on that earlier as well. It's, if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not a chore. But if you're getting up every morning and going to work and you don't want to be there, but you're knowing you have no choice because you have to pay your bills.
Yep.
And then you're going to get 40 years down the track and realize, Jesus, I don't have enough still. That's why we need to start getting in the advice out there and understanding how we can invest safely and affordably.
Well, Albert, how can we get in touch with you, mate, if we want to talk about these things?
Yeah, you can get on LinkedIn. It's yourpropertyempire.net is our website.
Right.
And we can reach out to anyone anytime. But they can reach us on LinkedIn, Facebook. Yeah.
So that's yourpropertyempire.net.
.net.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And of course, through our portal there on our website at Wealth by Design, same story.
Yeah.
If you've forgotten that one, just call us.
we want to make life as easy as possible. As simple as that.
We'll pass you through to the Irishman.
That's right. To be sure.
To be sure.
Why not? Well, you can speak to this Irishman, sort of, on the way through. Obviously, the link is on the edgeradioaustralia.com page. Your smiling face comes up, mate. Click away, and you can literally get in contact with any of the wonderful businesses that you deal with, mate.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing.
It's easy to find.
Easy. Let's keep it easy. Right?
It's easy to find, Albert, through the network, but they go direct. They get you. They go straight to the man.
They can, and we can certainly deal with them for sure.
Yeah. Oh, can I get one more question? Because I know you're looking to wind up. You've got more shows coming up.
Go for it.
There is positive gearing and there's negative gearing, right?
Yep.
And so would there be many of your people that are positively geared?
There would be, again, especially now with the types of, if you're going for dual keys or dual incomes or properties that have got a higher rental yield, and especially clients that have got that maybe $120,000, $150,000 of income, because their depreciation that they're able to get back on that. So a lot of our clients are in that. They might be $50, $60, $100 a week positive cash flow after, but now a lot of clients are chasing more of the capital growth. And as long as they can afford, and that's what I was saying earlier, it's important to understand where the clients are sitting and can they afford to buy a certain type of property. Because the high yielding properties are great, but they generally don't give the same appreciation or capital growth.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And in order for you to build a portfolio, you realize the equity and the appreciation of the property is far more important than the actual cash flow.
Yeah.
But when you start getting into your later years and wanting to retire, then it's focusing on cash flow. But again, there's an accumulation phase, and you want to acquire the assets as many as you can.
Build your wealth.
Build your wealth while you can. And as you start to get closer into your retirement days, that's when you'll start to slow down on the acquiring of the assets and start paying down the debt and focus more on cash flow and making sure there's enough there to keep you going when you retire. So, yeah, cash flow is great, but unfortunately, it's not the only thing to look at. There's a lot more.
Fantastic. Thank you. And the other one I had in mind was, this is the old financial planner in me coming out. When they've got debt in their super funds or debt outside their super funds, might be in their trust or their own name, it doesn't matter. Does the subject ever come up about where should we go when it comes to getting insurance to cover the debt? Does that ever come up? Do you guys bring it up, or if you don't bring it up, do they bring it up? Because all of a sudden there's a liability there, and from of course our point of view, well, geez, if you've got 600 grand's worth of debt, you need at least 600 grand's worth of life insurance. We would say that as advisors,
I can imagine,
to cover everyone's ass, especially in a super fund, because you need liquidity if you're going to die, because the beneficiaries are going, well, Christ, we're geared to buggery here. We have to sell all these assets, but if there's a bunch of cash comes in when they die, then bingo, there's no pressure.
Got options
to liquidate assets. So
yeah, it's not something that normally comes up unless the client, especially if the client is coming from a financial advisor already. We expect that a lot of that would have already been covered.
Yeah, so it's not really in your wheelhouse.
We can't. Yeah. We can't go into that kind of advice with the client, and that's where we'll always kind of draw the line and go, listen, if you need to get more information, I'd expect you to go back to your accountant, financial advisor.
Yeah.
If it's your average mum or dad investor that just wants to buy in a standard investment property and they're not going through their super or anything like that, it's always good for them to have insurance taken out to cover their extra debt that they're going to have, to make sure that if something did happen to them, whoever is their main breadwinner, that there's going to be enough there to cover their existing debt position anyway. But if it's coming, we expect that would have been covered off with their financial advisor.
And there's no pushback on the banks if there's there's not a question the banks ask about when they're approving the loan.
No, the main,
they've got the equity, right? So
correct. As long all the thing the banks want to look at is
security.
Have you got the serviceability?
Yeah.
Yep.
And as long as you've got that serviceability and you've got contributions regular coming in,
yes,
then the getting the finance is not an issue.
And the loan to value ratio is right.
Yeah. Then we generally don't find.
Bloody fantastic, mate.
It really is, actually.
A font of knowledge. That's bloody fantastic. So
15 years of it, you hope that you'd pick up some knowledge.
You hope so. Yeah, I think you've done it right. Actually, to the point, we've popped your details there as well onto the bottom of the screen. So if anyone wants the address to get hold of Albert, there it is. Thank you, gentlemen. Tell you what a good talk.
Thank you, Albert. Thanks for coming.
That was fun.
Yeah, great conversation. I learned a lot actually. It's really, which is what I'm trying to do here. I like to sit here, be the sponge, and
it's good listening to all these people every week.
This is why I do it. Look, thank you very much for being part of the show, both of you, and of course to wonderful watchers, listeners around the world. Absolute pleasure. If you do want any more details, jump onto either the website you see there for Albert's business, of course, otherwise wealthbydesign.com. Is there a .au? Of course there is. Exactly right. Look, I'm trying to I'm trying to make it look slick. It's not working. Never mind. Edge Radio Australia. There you go. Thanks for being part of Wealth by Design here on Edge Radio Australia.